Actions. We're going to talk about it. What do you got, buddy? Better focus? So in what way?
Like, on like activities and stuff, like I wasn't getting more like kind of bored or whatever.
Okay.
More, like, focused on it, and I was more open-minded.
Okay. That's really good. What else do we got? If we did our meditations, so are the girls not showing up, or?
I don't know.
They're not here.
Oh, okay.
We'll just talk about it later.
Yeah.
I'll look at things I don't like as like an opportunity instead of chore now.
Okay. That's really good, right? Because can you make chores a meditation? That's awesome.
I'm able to refocus better, it feels like. So like when I get down on myself, I can get back to like what's really happening and not be like all down on myself.
Okay. That's awesome. What else do we got?
I play way better.
Play way better? That is a side effect. You're going to play a lot more free because you're not caught up in things you can't control. It's really good. What else? You girls got anything? No? We did them, though? Everybody did them. Yes? Okay. Okay. You weren't here, that's fine. You have a pass. Same with whoever else told me that. Cool. So everyone's seeing, like, changes from what I'm hearing. That's positive. That's really, really good. Cool. So write down the date today. Okay. Energy and space is the topic. Just need something to write with. I got you. Okay. Energy and space. Does anybody want to guess how in the world this is going to relate to the mind? Okay. That's a very, very good guess. Did everybody hear that? No? Repeat what you just said. Yes. Okay, so we're going to talk about that. Girls and boys, this circle represents the space within the mind. Is there an unlimited amount of space within the mind?
Yes. No.
Meaning, can I think about a million things at once? So does that mean there's a limited amount of energy? Because this line right here represents energy within the mind. Okay? Does that make sense, kids? So space is the container for our energy. Cool? Energy is what goes inside the space within the mind. It's limited. If it's limited, what does that mean? If I use energy somewhere, that means it's less energy being spent somewhere else. Correct? If it's limited, right? If it was infinite and you had as much as you want, it wouldn't matter. But it's limited, so it does matter. So if we spend more time, say, in the past or the future, that's less time being spent where? In the present, because we have an opportunity cost with our space and energy within the mind. Does that make sense? So let's write this down. Space is the container for energy within the mind. Okay. We got it, girls? Beautiful. And what else did we say? So the term's opportunity cost. So opportunity cost is when you have a limited amount of something. And when you spend it somewhere, that means less of it's being spent somewhere else. Does that make sense? So for opportunity cost, you could write down an example. If I spend more energy in the past or the future, that's less energy being spent in the present. We all cool with that? So let's write that down. Opportunity cost. Are we all on the same page for what energy and space means when we talk about the mind? What is energy? It fuels something, correct? Is that what energy is? So it gives more power to something, and we'll talk a lot more about that today. Cool? Awesome. So kids, now what do we think the problem is when we talk about energy and space? Let's go back to class 3. You remember when we talked about judging and non-judging? And everyone that, did you find it on YouTube, the other classes that you could find? Okay, so we're going to go back and watch all of those, so all of this makes sense? Okay, so you have judging and non-judging. So say Hadley has 3 serves into the net, okay? If you're a volleyball player, most of your thoughts are going to be what? I suck, I should never serve, I should quit the team, right? Are those all judging statements? What is a non-judging statement of that example? I served 3 into the net. You state what happened. You don't give a spin if it's good or bad. Does that make sense? This circle represents the moment. What's going on, what you're experiencing. This line is wanting, right? So when something in our life, when we hit adversity, a lot of times, what do? Do we want it to be different? That's normally our habitual state, natural reaction is, this shouldn't have gone this way. It should have gone this way, right? I want it to be this way, okay? So we create separation from the moment with our wanting. Wanting leads to something called attachment. What's attachment? What does being attached mean? Close, connected, not wanting to let it go. Really, really good. What were we going to say over here? Connected. Okay. So we can think of attachments within the mind, kids, as you need something to go your way for you to be okay. So let's think of this attachment as results, right? Hadley needs results to go well for her to continue to be your best player in person. Results have to go well for her. She's attached to results, positive ones, right? So when results don't go Hadley's way, and I'm just using you as the example, Hadley, okay? There's going to be a lot of strain, a lot of tension, a lot of resistance to what's going on because of that attachment. Does that make sense? The more attachment we have, the less what we have. In day 1, I said, I'm here to give you what? Yes? Who said it? Freedom. Write that word down. Freedom. Right? Most of us, are we slaves to the mind? Meaning whatever we think or feel, we just habitually do whatever that's saying. Correct? We identify with it. Okay? If we need something to go our way to be okay, is that less freedom? Yes. The more attachments you have, the less free you're going to be. Right? I want you all to get to a point where it doesn't matter what happens. You can be okay and handle the situation the way it needs to be handled. And you're not freaking out over wanting the moment to be different in any way. Does that make sense? Okay. So for freedom, being okay no matter what is going on, that's what freedom is within the mind. Got that, Nick? Okay. And the more attachments we have, the less what we have. Freedom. We got that? This line, what leads to attachment? What was the word I used? Wanting. Write that down. Wanting leads to attachment. So it's not that I'm here to teach you how to want less. I'm here to teach you how to want now. That's the key, is learning how to want what's going on in this moment instead of wanting outside of this moment. Because is that what most of us want all the time? Something outside of now? We think the solution is somewhere out there. I need to do this differently, or if I had this, or if I had that, right? And even if we do get that thing that we wanted, and we think it's going to save us, what do we go do? Do we go want another thing? Right? So it's not, we need to stop wanting outside of the moment and learn how to want what's here, okay? And this is called what does the board say? Being like water, okay? Bruce Lee, do you guys know who Bruce Lee is? Anyone? He's a famous actor, martial artist, okay? He's also a philosopher, but he's really famous for this quote, okay? Being like water. If I punch water, okay, what happens? What did you say? Yes, it splashes, okay? The water itself, does it form with the punch? Yes, the water forms with the punch. It forms with the adversity. It doesn't resist the adversity, it uses the adversity, right? The only reason you have problems, kids, is because you want it to be different than it is. If you don't want it to be different and you use whatever that quote-unquote adversity is to your advantage, is it a problem? No. So it's learning how to say yes more. Yes to whatever's happening in this moment. This is good for me. I'll be able to handle whatever's here. I'm not going to want it to be different. I always want it to be the way it is. Does that make sense? And this all stems from learning how to let go. What does let go mean? Yeah, right? That's perfect. When we're holding on to things, attachments, okay? Are we holding on for things, the moment to be a certain way? Learning how to let go is dropping those and just being free. Cool? Are we all kind of getting the gist of where the speech is going to go? Is anyone completely lost? It's okay if we're completely lost. We're good? Cool. So, energy. So energy is something that fuels something, correct? So it gives it what? Power, right? Attention, all right? The most powerful thing you have as a human being is intention. What is intention? Yes, so is that using attention in a specific way? In a way that's on purpose for you? Yes, okay? Write that down. Intention is using attention on purpose. Can you have attention on something without trying to have attention on it? Yeah. When we're mindless, is there a lot of attention on things that we don't see? You remember that analogy? So let's say that when I'm mindless, this room is dark. Can you see what's going on within the mind, your thoughts and feelings? If the room's dark? You can't see. Does that mean attention's not going to be on things like, say you're driving? You kids can't drive. Okay, let's just use driving for the example because that's the best one I can think of. So a lot of times when you get older, kids, and you drive, you're going to get to your destination and you have no idea how you got there. That's mindlessness. Did you still have to have attention for your brain and body to know how to drive? Right? If attention wasn't on, you'd be sleeping. Does that make sense? So this is why it's really important. Where attention flows, and we want to use intention as much as possible because we want you to use it strategically, on purpose, what you can control, what's going to get you better faster. Correct? So wherever attention flows, energy flows with it. And whatever that energy lands on is going to expand. It's going to grow. Now, does this mean it can expand and grow things that aren't maybe positive? So it grows, whether it's good things or bad things, wherever that energy grows, it expands. Does that make sense? So good examples could be, let's use, okay. So here is, let's say, helpful thoughts. And unhelpful. So we have a limited amount of energy. And wherever that energy grows, it expands. Wherever that energy goes. Okay? So if we spend more energy on negative thoughts, and if we're mindless, are we going to do that? We're wired that way. We learned about that, negativity bias in class 1. We're wired to be more negative when we're mindless. So that means more energy is falling on the unhelpful thoughts. So what happens? Do more grow? So it's just a downward spiral. You're going to get more and more of these unhelpful thoughts because that's what your energy is going into. Does that make sense? Where, if I spend my intention on more helpful thoughts, is this going to grow? That will expand. But now, if less energy is being used on unhelpful thoughts, it's not just going to not expand, it's also going to what? It shrinks. So see how if we use energy correctly, it's a win-win situation for us? Yes? We're all on the same page? Another great example is a grateful person. Someone that's grateful, do they perceive themselves as having a lot? Yes. If you're a very, very grateful person, you're like, man, there's so much in my life that I can be grateful for. Why is that? Why do they perceive more things to be grateful for, even if they might have way less things than someone else? So when we put more energy into something, what happens? It grows. So is your brain going to notice more things that you're grateful for? Because that's where your energy is going, right? Now let's think of wanting. So the wanting we don't want is when we want things outside of the moment, correct? If we put more energy into wanting things outside of the moment, is what we perceive to not have going to grow? Yes, right? We're going to grow and continue to perceive all these problems and all these things that you want and all these things not going well because that's where your energy is going, into the things that you think you need to make you feel okay. Does that make sense? So it's very, very important where we put our energy because it grows whatever that energy goes to. Cool? We all on the same page? Yes? So in your notebooks, you can write down attention. Wherever attention goes, energy flows. And whatever it lands on expands. And then whatever it doesn't land on shrinks. Because no energy is being used for its power. So are we starting to see why mindfulness is so beneficial? Because do you have control over where you put your energy when you're mindful? And then can you grow deliberately within the mind what you want to grow? That's powerful. Are we all on the same page? Kind of interesting, isn't it? Okay. And at the end of the day, all we can control is our what? Ourselves and our on-purpose attention, intention. Attitude would be a use of intention. Does that make sense? So write that down. Intention is my only superpower. Intention, because that's on-purpose attention. And wherever you put that on-purpose attention, you can grow something, because it has energy. Cool? You all got that? Awesome. What's the difference between intention and attention? Perfect, right? And can you have attention mindlessly on something? That's where our problems come from. That's why being mindless hurts us way more than when we're mindful. Because we're putting attention into things we can't control, we have no power over, and it's likely going into negative things, which is making your life a whole lot worse and your game. Cool? So, space. Say we have another sporting event. Does someone want to give me an example of a result they had in sports that they wanted to be different? Who's got one for me? We've all had adversity, right? Who's got one? Oh, that's awesome one. So you injured yourself and you couldn't play the rest of the season. A lot of us will continue to think about wanting an alternate reality of when you weren't hurt, or I couldn't be hurt right now, I could be playing, right? Is that wanting doing us any good? It's doing us no good at all, and that's wasted energy. So that's our problem, is we're poorly using our energy and space and what our minds can actually do to help grow us. And so a blockage in the mind is when we perceive that event as something that's bad or wrong or isn't going my way, right? We resist the blockage. But if we learn how to be like water, if we learn how to form with the quote-unquote, the adversity or the problem in front of us, okay, can we use that to grow and get better and to get better results towards the sport that you're missing playing? Does that make sense, kids? So if we say yes to blockages, they don't become blockages. They become fuel, actually. It's like a launch pad to your growth. Isn't that kind of cool? Holding bags. So mentally, if we have a lot of attachments or we have a lot of energy being spent somewhere other than the moment, you will literally feel heavier because you're holding on to things mentally through the moment. So let's say I'm trying to think about the past and the future as I'm walking through the present moment, right? And I'm holding a lot of bags or attachments or worries or fears that I have because I need it to go this way. I want it to be this way. It can't be any other way. It needs to go this way for me. right? When we learn to let go of those bags, you will literally feel lighter and more free. And are you going to play if you feel lighter and more free? Yeah, you're not worried because you're only focused on what you can do in this moment. Make sense? So that's where that letting go comes from, because when we're holding on to things, we're not letting go. And that's creating the tension and the problems and the resistance in our life. Cool? Cool. Is everyone with me right now? We're all on the same page? Okay. So, letting go and surrender. So you can write this down. Letting go is something you do in this moment. Surrender is something you do outside of the moment, or to outside thoughts. Okay? So let's think of, once you guys are done writing, so let's think of goals, right? A lot of times, do we get pretty worried about goals or things in the future? For sure, because we want it to go a certain way, which is totally natural, okay? But again, does that wanting and worrying do anything for us? All it does is waste what? And energy spent there is less energy being spent on what you can do to actually get you closer to the goal. Make sense? So surrender is letting go when you think about things outside of this moment. So if I'm worried about things in the future, an example of surrender could be, who has a goal? Someone give me an example of a goal. Brady. You want to be a pilot. That's awesome, okay? So an example of surrendering doesn't mean you're giving up on the goal. All it means is you're giving up trying to control things that you cannot. Does that make sense? So if Brady surrenders to the goal, he's not giving up being a pilot. He's giving up spending energy on things he can't control, right? The result of being a pilot, Brady, is not something you can control. But what you can do to get there, your intention and energy spent on what you can do right now to get better towards that goal, is something you can control. Does that make sense, kids? So surrender is letting go of those mental perceptions of stuff outside of the moment. So it's a type of letting go. Does that make sense on what we mean by surrender? So write that down. Surrender is not giving up. It's giving up trying to control things you can't. Has everybody got that? Okay, and then letting go itself, okay, can come down to a few simple things. One, we want outside of the moment less, correct? Because wanting outside of the moment is that line in that diagram we created that leads to attachments. Do we remember that? Okay. So instead of wanting outside the moment, what do we have to learn to want more? What's here, right? Saying yes to the moment that's here. Not thinking it's a problem and thinking, oh, I wish it was this way, or I wish it was this way, or I want it to be different. Does that make sense? So write that down. Learning how to let go is to stop wanting what's outside of you and to want this moment. So essentially it comes down to learning how to say what word? When we want outside of the moment, we're saying no, right? No, this should not be this way. So learning how to let go is saying what? Write that down. Say yes in big, bold letters. It's probably the most important phrase you'll learn today. Say yes. So an example, let's use Hayes' example. That's a really good one because most people in that scenario would always be thinking about, it could be this way. It could have been different, right? Hayes, an example would be saying yes is Yes, this is exactly what I needed. This is exactly what I needed to fuel my growth, to get closer to my goals. I needed this to be better. That's saying yes to the moment. Does that make sense, kids? All on the same page? That's learning how to let go, though. Because if you say yes to the moment, you're not wanting outside of now, and you're not going to have anything to hold on to. But say you do want, that's totally okay. Or say we're doing our meditation and we get lost in thought. When we get lost in thought and we notice, what do we do when we go back? You let go, right? And you come back. That's perfect. So have I already built the letting go muscle into your activity? Yes. Which is why it's designed that way. Okay? Cool. Everyone's on the same page? Yes? But essentially, if we're always using our energy in what we can control and we're not wasting it on things we can't, or worrying, or not surrendering, are you going to play at peak performance in the moment? Yeah, because all your energy is on what you can control. Now, peak performance, does that mean peak results? No, 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 no. Peak performance does not mean peak results. But are you likely going to have better results if you're at peak performance? Yes. It doesn't mean it's going to be perfect. It just means you're using what you can in the moment to be the best you can be. Because is that all we can do, essentially? Right? Is that all we can do? Okay. I know this isn't as fun as weightlifting and volleyball and basketball, but is a lot of what we learned today very relatable to all of us? I would say so. This is stuff I would have wished I'd known when I was your age. I didn't learn any of this until I was in college. So you have a huge advantage if you actually try and soak in right now what you're learning. Cool. So, it's 32. I haven't gotten to this slide yet, but I'm going to try today. Okay, so resistance. So remember that diagram when we want something and we create a line of attachment? That's also creating tension and strain, right? You want the moment to be different as it is. You've separated it. When we judge something, we separate. Do we remember that from class 3? Perfect. Okay. There's two words. There's pain and there's suffering. Can someone give me an example of both? What's pain? Say I break my arm. Well, yes, okay, but could you have mental pain too? The initial pain of some experience, right? So you could have mental pain from the initial experience, or you could have physical pain from the initial experience. But suffering is dwelling on the pain. Suffering is the added layer, your interpretation, or wanting something to be different. That's creating your problem. Because can you control pain? You can never control pain. But can you have some control over suffering? And that's the issue. People don't think they can control it. You can. You have a lot of say in it. Just stop trying to want whatever you're experiencing to be different and to be with it and to say yes to it. Does that make sense? So that's essentially what we mean by resistance in war when we're fighting with something. Okay? Suffering is when we fight with the pain, right? We have no suffering with the pain if we say yes, or we be like water towards it. We flow with the object of quote-unquote adversity. Does that make sense, the difference between pain and suffering? Let's write it down then. Write down in your own words what I just said the difference between the two are. Does that make sense, kids? Let's go with this analogy too. So does flowing with whatever the experiences you don't want mean you're suppressing them? So in meditation, if I try to suppress certain thoughts or I try and suppress negative thoughts, what happens with a beach ball? Say you're in a pool and you push a beach ball under the water, lower and lower and lower. What happens? And the lower it goes, the more what? It erupts? So suppression does not mean you're flowing with the object. Suppression means you're trying to avoid something. Does that make sense? What we're trying to learn with flow and letting go is not avoiding. You're working with. Does that make sense? Or no? So write that down. Suppression is trying to avoid. Flowing equals working with. So this is a really good one now, kids. Okay? Are there any bad emotions? No. Think about it. What did we just learn? Do all emotions have a certain purpose? Emotions are helping you to try and take action, to do something with the emotion. It's telling you that something's a little off balance here and something needs to change. Okay? There are no bad emotions. If we're interpreting them as bad, that will create more suffering. Does that make sense? So say sadness, that could be initial pain, but if we dwell on the sadness, are we suffering? Does that make sense? And not looking at that as a bad thing. It's not bad. It's there to help you. Work with it. Stop trying to suppress it or avoid it. That's where all our problems come from. Do we get that? How there's no bad emotions? All emotions want to belong. They're there to help you. They all have a purpose. We should not try and hold on to certain ones or be attached to some emotions and not others, because that will create issues. Make sense, kids? Okay. I got through that as fast as possible, but I wanted to add that today. So, now, your activity for the week, kids. Whoopsies. Your activity, okay? So, today we learned about letting go and surrendering, correct? You've already learned that your base meditation has letting go as an aspect of it, correct? When you see the thought and you let it go and you come back to the breath. So letting go is already a part of it. Surrendering, we're going to do a journal exercise. Okay, so right now I want everyone to write down their biggest fear, whether it's a person or a player. You're going to write down your biggest fear. Because when we're not surrendering to something, are we fearful of what could happen or that I'm not going to be able to handle a certain situation? Is that what's going on? Yes. So why do we think we had you write down your biggest fear? We're going to practice what? Letting go and surrendering to it, right? So what is surrendering? We talked about that definition 10 minutes ago. What's surrendering? Is surrendering giving up? What is it then? It is letting go of what? Things you can't control. Stop trying to control things you can't. That is the issue, right? So an example, my biggest fear right now could be this facility, right? Maybe not making enough money for this facility to continue working and for all these kids to use it and to grow. That could be one of my biggest fears right now at the moment. But an example of me surrendering it to it, what I would write in my journal, can I control that? What can I control? What I do right now. How intentional and present and good of a person can I be to everyone I'm talking to in each moment? That's going to help give the best chance of the result. I can't guarantee the result, but I can guarantee that everything in my power is going to be used in the moment to the best of its ability. That's an example of surrendering. So I don't have to worry about it. I'm not going to worry about that result. I'm going to do what I can now over and over again, and whatever happens, I'll be completely satisfied because I did what I could. I couldn't do anything differently. Does that make sense? So right now, everyone wrote down their biggest fear, correct? Now do an exercise like I just did in your own words, how you'd want to surrender to that fear. Essentially telling yourself, you're going to be okay. You have the tools you need to work with it if it does happen. Make sense? Are there any questions about what we're doing? Has everybody got that written down? Does anybody want to share? It's okay if you're not. Anybody comfortable sharing? That's all good. That's understandable. Okay, but everyone, does anybody have questions about how to do it? Okay. Are you going to feel a lot better if you continually surrender to a lot of those worries we have? Yeah. It's so freeing to not worry about the things you can't control. And just focus on what you can do over and over again. That's, honestly, it can be that simple. So you're going to do one of those a day. So you're doing one of those mini journal exercises to take you 1 to 2 minutes with your 1 minute added to the meditation we've been working on with the in and out. Does that make sense? So if you're new, so you two are at 6 minutes, correct? And Ben, you're at 6 minutes because it was your first time back at class. If you've been with me through the 6 weeks, what minute are you girls at now? I think you're at 9. That's correct. Okay? Because we have to keep upping the minutes. It's just like weightlifting. You can't just sit there and do the same weight over and over again. Cool? Does anyone feel like they don't know how to do the in-out meditation correctly? Everyone's kind of getting it? If you want to challenge yourself, you can try and do it without mental cues. You can try and do it without the in and out. It's going to be a lot harder. So I just want to throw that out there, a feeler out there. If you want to try and challenge yourself, just focus on the sensation of breathing without saying in, out. And when you get lost, come back to the sensation of breathing. But if it's too hard that way, can you keep doing the in and out? Yes. Cool. We have time to go for 3 minutes here. So then subtract whatever your total is, and you owe me that for the rest of the day. So like yours would be 6 minutes, yours would be 3 minutes. Make sense? Everyone feels like they know how to do this one, right? At this point, all of us should be trying to do it without moving. Open to the urge to move. I promise you, you can sit still for more than 6 minutes. It just takes mental energy. Is that powerful if you can feel the urge to move and not move? That means you're not a slave to the mind. If you mindlessly have to itch yourself or move, you are a slave to its urges. Cool? Everybody know what we're doing? 3 minutes. We're not spine straight. We're not resting on the back.